Before we get to the movie, Deb, I'm going to do something that I've never done on this show before. I'm going to tell you the movie that I chose for us to watch tonight before I came to my senses. Do you remember earlier this week when I emailed you and said, hey, what is it about scary movies that scares you? I'm just curious. Mm-hmm. Because I realized that the movie that I chose for this show, the Valentine's Day show, is actually very scary.
What was it?
It was Fatal Attraction.
Oh, I've seen that.
Oh, dang it.
No, I haven't. I've seen parts of it.
Would that have been a bad choice?
Maybe.
It wouldn't have been fun.
It wouldn't have been fun.
Okay. So, for you folks at home, you can consider this a little sneak preview. We will be watching Fatal Attraction on this show at some point. Could be next month. It could be next year. I don't know when it's going to be. But that is a movie that will be shown in the basement.
Are you going to make sure that there's not a bunny lover that's next to you while you watch it?
No. I've got a bunch of movies that I've never seen before. None of you know what they are. Every episode I'm going to spring one on you. It might be good, it might be bad. We'll watch it on the old leather couch and then talk about it. Welcome to the basement. This is our Valentine's Day episode, our longest running tradition here in the basement, and I'm glad to have Deb back to celebrate it with me.
Hi.
My favorite Valentine.
Aw.
Second favorite.
Okay, fair enough.
Sometimes I find when it comes to romantic movies that it's best to err on the side of the classics. Specifically this classic, Jane Eyre.
Oh my gosh. All right.
I couldn't tell what kind of reaction that was. Is that a reaction of excitement or dread?
I don't know. Elizabeth Taylor is in this.
Really?
Yes!
How did I miss that? Released in 1943, Jane Eyre stars Joan Fontaine and Orson Welles. It was directed by Robert Stevenson with a screenplay by John Houseman and Aldous Huxley of Brave New World fame. Jane Eyre has been adapted as a film or television series 14 times. In 1910, 1921, 1934, 1943, 1949, 1956, 1963, 1970, 1973, 1983, 1996, 1997, 2006, and 2011. Between now and 2011 is the largest gap in cinema history with no new Jane Eyre.
I mean, do they just not get it right? Or they just keep trying and they're like, ugh.
Keeps putting asses in seats. One of the struggles that Ms. Eyre goes through in this story is whether or not to marry Mr. Rochester. Your gift today is a happily married lady who I hope you will enjoy.
Mrs. Potato Head. Those are some big lips. Like, those are like half the size of her face.
You can give that to the little potato head in your life. Or keep it for yourself.
Well, just look at that top lip.
She's definitely got the collagen injections.
Thank you.
So climb down out of that carriage in your best finery and join us on the old leather settee as we take in a little bit of culture with Jane Eyre.
Do come in. So the first thing that they really want you to know is that this is based on a book.
Hey, I didn't come to this movie to do no reading. 1820. Gateshead Hall.
Living in the original cupboard under the stairs at an aunt's house is a little girl.
Mrs. Reed has a young ward who she doesn't like. Her name is Jane Eyre.
Only this morning she struck her little cousin most brutally.
Is that the kid from Willy Wonka?
Augustus Gloop?
Yeah.
Did you strike her first?
No one did, Mama. You did. You know you did. You knocked me down and hit my head and made it bleed.
Augustus, no more chocolate river for you for the rest of the week. Jane leads a miserable life at Gateshead Hall.
Do you know where the wicked go after death?
They go to hell.
And what is hell?
Gateshead Hall.
But children younger than you die daily.
All because of me. So when she is given the opportunity from Mr. Brocklehurst to go to the Lowood orphanage, she accepts.
I can't wait to get out of here.
Goodbye, Mrs. Reed. I hate you and I hate everything about you.
Yes!
And I'll never call you aunt as long as I live.
Bridge burned. Oh, she is excited. She's going to do all this cool stuff. But there's nothing cool about Lowood.
The worst of the worst in literary boarding schools.
And of course, Mr. Brocklehurst begins her stay at Lowood in the worst possible way.
Shun her example. Avoid her company. Exclude her from your sports.
Jesus.
No, right?
This seems wholly unnecessary. She is evil, and so she should be beaten and shunned.
Punish her body to save her soul. No better than many a little heathen that says its prayers to Brahma and kneels before Juggernaut.
I say all this because she hit a kid. She has to stand on that stool all day, for reasons. Hi, my name is Nancy. I'm here to punish your body and shun you from sport.
A little girl named Helen
Creeps into the room.
I brought you this from supper.
It's a handful of wood shavings. She's nice.
and it's her first friend.
Look, it's Zendaya in the corner. It's Zendaya. Dr. Rivers comes by to give the girls their annual checkup, which involves briefly looking into their open mouths for a few seconds. Helen's got a little bit of a cough, so Dr. Rivers says that he'll return with some medicine. Brocklehurst punishes both of the girls by making them walk around in the rain.
Oh boy, I hope he gets his curmuttance.
Curmuttance?
Comeuppance? Comeuppance?
I think he's going to get his curmuttance. The doctor is aghast that this would happen. He gives her medicine to no avail.
Was it Providence that sent that poor girl to get drenched in the rain?
Dr.
Was
Rivers?
it Providence that ordered her to her death? Yes, to her death, Mr. Brocklehurst.
Happy Valentine's Day to me. God.
This is kind of a downer.
Good night, Jane. Good night, Helen.
No, I can't.
I do wish they hadn't.
Bet you wish you were watching a bunny being boiled
Oh,
at
I
this point.
sure do.
Helen dies.
How about next Valentine's Day we watch Schindler's List?
Jane is at the cemetery being sad, and Dr. Rivers gives her a pep talk.
Don't forget, the harder you try, the more God will help you.
God will give curmuttance to all who deserve it.
And 10 years later,
Jane is all grown up. You know, I think we're going to hire Jane as one of the teachers so we can pay her less.
I cannot accept your offer, sir.
Yeah.
I do not wish to stay at Lowood.
This is unheard of.
Oh, it's preposterous.
I intend to find a position as a governess.
And if I can't get that, I'll dress as a boy and become a governor.
I am leaving Lowood, sir.
bye Felicia.
And hey, give me my letter. Ooh, this letter contains words that are exciting.
She has this governess position that she applied for in the newspaper.
Jane goes in town, to London presumably, and goes to the George Inn. She is looking for Mrs. Fairfax.
Who's the young lady, Sam?
Couldn't say, sir. Just coming by coach.
Well, give her my compliments and ask if she'd care to join me in a glass of Madeira.
Yes, sir.
Oh God, is that the guy? Augustus?
Could be.
Gross.
Shot down again. No nookie for Augustus. Well, I suppose it's my curmuttance. She soon finds herself at Thornfield, a big castle on the moors. Mrs. Fairfax is not the person she's working for, she's just the housekeeper.
Thornfield belongs to Mr. Edward Rochester, and little Adele is his ward.
She meets the little girl, Adele.
Who's a cute little French girl.
Now you speak like Monsieur Rochester.
Never in my life have I been awakened so happily.
Well, we've seen your life so far.
But when he's angry, that's terrible. And may the Holy Virgin give me grace. And God bless Monsieur Rochester.
Hey Adele, let's play the silence game.
Learn to write as soon as possible so you can just write this stuff down. Because
Yeah, you're born to journal,
I
kid.
cannot hear that voice.
Jane is walking around on the moors and she's nearly run over by a big dog.
That's a Great Dane.
It's an okay Dane. I've seen better. And a man on a horse. He's a gruff, surly man.
Stand out of the way.
Who are you? Ah, I'm not going to answer you.
You're not a servant at the hall.
I'm the new governess.
Oh.
The French.
And they go their separate ways.
She goes back to Thornfield.
And she sees that's, what is it, Dr. Threshold? No, that's the name of the place. Dr. Rivertown, what's his name? Rochester. His name, thank you.
Her employer.
Mr. Rochester has returned home. And he is something else.
I was to learn that this was indeed true.
Hush mask, soon lay tortured soul, fine, gentle, and kindly.
Why? Why would you think that?
As you see, I'm a crusty old bachelor.
I will be inviting 10 other crusty old bachelors tonight, and we will compete for your affections. One by one, you will eliminate us until you get down to the bachelor that is the least crusty, and then we will be married. It's a little thing I like to call the crusties.
Do you find me handsome?
No, sir.
Does my forehead not please you? What do you tell from my head?
Seriously, check this out.
Fortunes knocked me about, kneaded me with her knuckles, till now I flatter myself I'm as hard and tough as an idiot.
Okay, you put your penis away, all right? That's really aggressive.
Where are you going?
It's time for Adele's lesson.
Oh, young lady.
That Mama used to do it, is it not?
Precisely.
The French child.
And then one night...
goes to Mr. Rochester's room and finds that his bed is on fire. She wakes him up, they put out the fire.
Who tried to kill you? What happened? Where did that fire come from? Silence, woman! Don't ask questions!
All that people know is that's actually a female dog. Her name is Marmaduchess.
Goodness knows how long he'll be away. One can never tell with Mr. Rochester. Maybe a day or a year or a month.
Or a nanosecond. Rochester comes back bringing guests. These are the crusty bachelors. I told you about these guys. All of the hoity-toity folks that live in the surrounding areas are coming to Thornfield for a party. One of these guests is Blanche Ingram, who Mr. Rochester is having a sort of romance with. It's understood by everybody that he's probably going to marry her. Jane doesn't like this at all, because she's finding herself to be falling in love with Mr. Rochester. There's a big party. Hello, I'm Jane Eyre. I'm here to absorb your inevitable abuse. They're singing.
And I love young boy.
Yeah, give it to me.
She likes my forehead.
Don't speak to me of governesses. The clever ones are detestable, and the others are grotesque.
And the one you have is positively grotesqueable. An unexpected guest arrives.
Mr. Mason of Spanish Town, Jamaica.
Rochester doesn't like this one bit. They go off and have a secret conversation. Late at night, there's a ruckus. Everyone's awake. Rochester takes Jane up into the tower and finds that Mr. Mason has been injured. Whatever you do, don't open that door. And that door is a-rattling.
Now, Doctor, be on the alert. Give you half an hour for dressing the wound, getting the patient downstairs and all.
If you're unable to dress the wound in 30 minutes, then it's free. Rochester and Jane have a series of conversations where innuendos are flying. When are they just gonna tell each other how they feel?
Oh, Jane.
Oh, Jane.
Cold fingers.
He's the man with the Midas touch.
Sometimes I have a queer feeling with regard to you, Jane.
A feeling that my pants are shrinking.
It's as if I had a string somewhere under my left rib.
Don't listen to me, Jane. I'm weird.
Jane, it's strange. It's almost unearthly thing.
Tug at my rib string. Finally, Rochester says to Jane, I want to marry you.
Say it, I'll marry you. Say it, Jane. Say it. Say it, I'll marry you.
Simon says, say you'll marry me. She says yes, and the sky responds.
God didn't like that. They're going to be married. How wonderful it is.
Dear, there's no one I'd rather you marry, not even Mrs. Fairfax.
Marry Mrs. Fairfax? Why, I didn't think of that. Sorry, Jane.
Yeah.
The ceremony happens.
That if either of you know any impediment, why you may not lawfully be joined in matrimony.
I don't know. Can you think of anything?
There's something.
I don't know what it is.
I can't quite recall it. Mr. Rochester is already married to Bertha Mason. She went mad. He locked her in the tower and pretended that she didn't exist.
So they go up to the attic so everyone can see this crazy old lady that's stuck up there.
Here we go. Here we go.
I was married at 19 in Spanish Town to a bride already courted for me.
What happens in Spanish Town? Everyone wants to stay in Spanish Town.
But it does not.
It never does.
I watched her excesses drive her at last into madness.
I found that she would get especially mad at the end of every month. I couldn't figure out why.
I could crush you between my hands.
The red flags are now sirens. Beep, beep. Beep, beep.
Goodbye, Mr. Rochester. I love you.
She's out in the world.
She has no references, so she can't get a job. And so she goes back to Gateshead to see Bessie, the only person who was ever kind to her. Bessie recognizes the brooch that she gave young Jane and is happy to see her.
Master John isn't here anymore.
The boy who she smacked back in the day.
As soon as he was of age, he was off to London.
To the chocolate factory where he was never seen since. Mrs. Reed had a stroke and she's about to kick it.
That's how I want to die. With a lace collar. Right up against my neck.
Mrs. Reed dies. All of her stuff and her property is auctioned off. So now Jane's not going to be able to live here either. But out in the storm.
Jane.
It's me, the shrub.
Jane.
She knows that Mr. Rochester's in trouble. She returns to Thornfield.
And the castle is burned down.
Old Bertha got out and she torched the place.
And there she was on the roof. He came towards her to help her down. And just as he seemed to reach her, he gave a dreadful scream and ran from him to the edge.
Definitely didn't push her off the roof. He
No.
definitely, I can tell you that for certain.
I watched it. And I rehearsed this. Oh, does she get the dog?
A staircase collapsed on Mr. Rochester, and now he's blind. He comes a-hobbling into the ruins of Thornfield, hears Jane's voice, goes to her. They kiss, and they can now get married freely.
When our firstborn was put into his arms, he could see that the boy had inherited his own eyes as they once were.
And his super sexy forehead. And so this concludes the tumultuous journey of one Miss Jane Eyre. I didn't like the movie.
I hated it.
I didn't hate it. It was very tedious. The conversations, the long conversations. And it was really difficult to kind of understand what they were about because of Wells's performance.
Yeah.
I'm not sure why he made that choice to be so mumbly.
It wasn't even just the performance of the words, but it was the writing. What they chose to include, I can't imagine, told the same story that Charlotte Bronte told.
Sure.
It didn't make any sense. There was that part where he made her sit in the chair while he was in the comfortable chair, and then he stood up and started walking around. He was spiraling. And it felt a lot like dates that I've been on, where a guy just is like, started off being a little vulnerable, and then he just never had an opportunity to talk before, and then it just... And I'm just sitting there, and I'm like, I don't know what I'm supposed to do.
Yeah, oversharing.
Yeah. Do you take me? Do you accept me? Am I handsome? Blah, blah, blah. What am I supposed to do with all this?
Why do they keep talking around this? Why don't they just say what they're thinking? Maybe it's improper for her to do that, considering her station and the time. But he could say it. If he's using some sort of tactic, that tactic is not clear.
There was nowhere in there that it made sense that she fell in love with him.
There was no development. There was no momentum to it. There was no step-by-step.
There wasn't even a moment.
This happens and it deepens their connection. The movie is also a bit gothic to a fault. Dark and stormy and gloomy, and it gets tedious after a while. Like, I want some variation. They have that party. That's a little break from it.
Yeah.
The child actor who played young Jane was quite good.
I thought she was fantastic.
And little Liz Taylor.
She was great.
She was. Now, here's the thing. Whenever I see stars in very early roles as children, I can't tell if they just have this star quality that is undeniable, or if I'm just making that up because I know that they become such a big star.
It might be a little bit of both.
I think a little bit of both, yeah.
She did what she needed to do without, to us, any effort. She was the only warmth in the movie, right? All of a sudden, there was this breath of kindness.
And we needed that break from the bleakness. We needed this little ray of, oh, here's a friend.
She made all of us fall in love with that little girl. Yeah. So that when she died, it was actually probably the most authentic part of the whole movie. It broke my heart.
Yeah.
I'm starting to tear up a little bit thinking about it. Like, honestly.
I was thinking about the ending. And I wonder, do you think Rochester started the fire so he could have it as an excuse to go up and throw his wife off the roof?
I mean...
It could be.
I don't think that Charlotte Bronte would write that.
No.
But I would.
That's a possibility.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not written, but, you know, who knows? I mean, he really
certainly is.
He wanted Jane back. I think he knew that if Bertha was no longer in the picture, that he could get Jane to come back.
Yeah.
So it's entirely plausible. Joan Fontaine was fine.
I think that she was good. She had nothing to work with. Whatever she had to work with for that character was something that she had to bring because the writers gave her nothing.
Jane was a very one-dimensional character on the page.
I could not hear him talk anymore. I don't even know what he said. I think I just blanked out every time he spoke.
I'm sorry, this was not a very good romantic movie for Valentine's Day.
It felt like a first date, so... I mean, thanks, you know?
Well, we've closed the book on Jane Eyre, and now it's time for us to open the book on Seen It.
Let's do it.
Bongo Drums writes, have you guys ever seen Legends of the Fall? It's my least favorite movie. Way too melodramatic for me. You haven't seen Jane Eyre. Seen it.
What I distinctly remember about it was it was really long.
At one point, Brad Pitt wears an atrocious fake mustache.
That's right.
It's like straight out of a high school makeup kit. Young Brad Pitt, he's grown a lot as an actor.
Oh, yeah.
Back when he was young, though, he didn't have... He had this. The sad eyes and the pouty lips, and he just leaned on that. And I think when he started getting juicier roles, where he had to dig in further, then he developed a bag of tricks rather than just the one. Physically, he's fully arrived. Watching him walk, watching him mount a horse, for God's sake. You're like, I could watch this fellow all day. Except when he starts looking at the camera and talking and emoting.
I don't remember what they did in the movie.
They go off to war.
That's right, World War I.
Yeah.
It was always about the wars. Rashina McClintock, 77. The real chemistry in Crazy Stupid Love was between Gosling and Carell. They were hilarious together.
Seen it.
Seen it.
I probably would have avoided this movie my entire life because I would have assumed that it was similar to the movie Eat, Pray, Love. It's got a dumb ending. So many movies do.
Yeah, it does.
Right after I saw the movie, I wrote this piece. I'm just going to read it because I think it's pretty good.
All right.
Ryan Gosling's character is the perfect portrait of the ladies' man. Secretly tortured by loneliness, self-loathing, and mother issues. The creature comforts of wealth, idleness, and nightly anonymous sex only provide a veneer of happiness. The guy who lives at the bar and goes home with a different woman every night is either deeply hurt or deeply empty. Gosling is hurt, but he wants to be empty. A selfless mirror that only shows the object of his desire her own reflection, and the reflection of her own wants and desires, while simultaneously deflecting her attention away from the scared, hurt child inside of him.
I think that's a very good character portrayal of Ryan Gosling's character.
Revon Lee Salazar, Dune 2, Seen It.
Seen it.
Are you okay? You said you really liked Dune 1.
I did like Dune 1. I hated Dune 2 so much. I was getting so mad at the movie that I made Whitney turn it off.
Tell me more.
It was the longest 6 hours ever.
Denis Villeneuve makes vivid visual sci-fi pictures, and they're gorgeous to look at. Everything in this movie is so touchable. Whether it's real or computer generated, you can't tell.
Yeah.
You can't say that of Avatar. But they're so dry and bloodless, and
it was so dry.
They're rather boring.
The part that I really started to hate was with the second nephew.
Fade Rautha?
Yeah.
He's an interesting case because not since Darth Maul in the first Star Wars prequel has a villain had so much wasted potential. You expect this guy to be the badass of the universe. He has that battle in the arena, he does nothing, and then he dies.
I'm really tired of the Nazi visuals that are constantly used to say this is why they're bad.
It's a lazy crutch.
It's so lazy. To continuously see that crutch is a detriment to us now because that's all that people think Nazis are.
They think they're this cartoon.
Yeah, that's not the future necessarily. Mm-hmm. The future can look different than that and still be Nazis. Steve Thorne, Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf?
I'm not because I've seen it.
I've seen it.
Your husband was in a production of Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf on
Do you remember?
Stage. It was a very good production of the play. Unfortunately, when I went, had been severe flooding, so they had to move indoors.
Oh, it's like a tent thing?
No, it looked like a cafeteria. Good movie. It's actually one of my favorite movies.
Really?
Liz Taylor is in it. All grown up.
Yes, and she is a force. She is amazing in that role. Mm-hmm. I don't remember the character's name, but she was amazing. Martha.
George and Martha. Martha and George. Sad. It's a hard situation to think about because George and Martha hate each other, and they can never leave each other. It's this weird, tortured, codependent relationship that will never end. Well, it will not be an error for you to visit our website, welcometothebasementshow.com. All of our catalog of episodes are there, including ones that Deb has been my co-host on. And there are PayPal donation buttons that you can click on to make a one-time or rolling monthly donation to support this here show. We certainly would appreciate it. At the end of last year, we had a lot of really generous one-time donors, and I'm going to finish shouting them out. Kevin, who says, "Thank you so much for over a decade of great content. A thumb kiss from my wife and I." Tim, sorry the note got lost in the package. He's referring to a package that he sent to the P.O. Box. The records are the soundtrack for Signalis, a German horror game that draws influence from Japanese horror, H.P. Lovecraft, and the late, great David Lynch. It's some really real mood music. Love the show. I haven't listened to it yet, but I will soon. Damnation Inc. Thanks for keeping the website up to date. And David was also a donor. Deb will be here next week for unboxing, and right now you should take a look at this.
At least shake hands.
In the 1800s, that's the equivalent of foreplay.
Good night, Jane.
Yeah, did you see the little, there's a little finger movement in that?
I didn't notice that, no.
Didn't know? No, a little, no.
As you see, I'm a crusty old bachelor.